Hey friends, I'm Paola,
And I'm Carolina.
and you're listening to Grace
Giggles
and Girl Talk.
where girl talk is welcome,
Faith is our foundation.
and laughing is basically our love language.
Every week, we take a moment to have real conversations about what's happening around us at school, with friends, and really pause and listen to what is it that God is trying to teach us.
Plus some Q&A and maybe some singing because we can't help ourselves.
Welcome to the show. We are so excited. We are starting this series of, what are we calling it?
Blossoming into a beautiful...
Okay, and what are we doing with that, Carolina?
So, we're taking all of my old teachers and some new ones.
Not all because they're old, but the past.
We're seasoned. From past.
And we're talking to them every week
Yeah,
for the month of March.
yeah, March, and we may run into April a little bit. But today we have the one and only Miss Sheila. This lady, you guys, if you had the honor of knowing her at the Learning Tree Christian Academy or in Nicholasville, I know your life was changed by this woman. So she not only is a mom, a Mimi, an Army
Mimi.
veteran,
Yes.
a book author, let's not forget that,
Yes, ma'am.
a ministry lover,
Yes.
a wife,
Yes.
right?
Yes, me.
But above all, she's just Miss Sheila. And what an amazing person she is. So before Carolina was this, a very confident 11-year-old, very opinionated, Miss Sheila had the honor, I say honor, of having Carolina as a 18-month-old baby. So before she could actually even talk, Miss Sheila was there. So we are so excited. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
It's just amazing to see how much Carolina has grown over the years. You know, she was my first little girl enrolled at TLTCA. So I've told her before, and you know, your family has a really special place in my heart. Always has and always will.
Yeah. I told Carolina we may be sharing some pictures, and she was not super thrilled, but maybe I'll post some pictures here in just a minute. But Miss Sheila, I guess let's just do a couple icebreaker questions.
Okay.
Now that you see Carolina, and I'm sure you still remember that itty bitty girl that just, cling to you. How do you see Carolina now? Or from back then?
I see her now exactly like I thought she would be.
Really?
From the time that I had her, just her personality and she was a very strong-willed little girl in a very positive way. She knew what she wanted, and if she didn't want to do it, she was not going to do it. But those are the qualities that's made her who she is. And I knew that she was destined to do great things. I just knew it. There's always been something about her that's just been super special.
Yeah, I would agree with
Am I
that.
embarrassing you,
So-
Carolina? Am I embarrassing you?
She is, not you.
So, I guess tell us a little bit about you, because I know right now you are not in the daycare, but you're still impacting families.
That is
So-
true.
Tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, where you are today, and then maybe just walk us back as to how you went into loving kiddos and,
Okay.
thinking about the daycare. And then prior to that, I know you were a director at another facility in Nicholasville. So yes, walk us through that if you don't mind.
Okay. I don't mind. So the reason why I started in the early childhood education field was because of my own two children. I have two boys, well, young men now, Terrell and Brandon, and they are now 35 and 34. And when they were younger, they were probably around the age of 7 and 8, it was really hard to find quality childcare that I could afford. And at that point, it was expensive. Like almost my whole paycheck was going towards childcare. And I remember thinking one day I would really love to have my own center where families still receive quality care, but at a lower rate that everybody can afford it. Again, they were like 7 and 8 then. So over the years, I always kept that dream. Like at one point, I did have an in-home center at home, but it still wasn't the same of what I really wanted to do. And so I got into the childcare field at the very bottom as a floater. And so I worked at this childcare center that is still near and dear to my heart called First Choice Childcare in Lexington. That is where I started my career. And I just kind of worked my way up there and to assistant director. And after that, and all of this, what I want everyone to understand is this is a God thing. You know, God really does ordain our steps. And even when it looks like, oh my gosh, this is taking years, you know, sometimes we have to go through things that prepare us for that season. And so out of the blue, I was at a church event, and one of the church administrators came out to me and said, "Are you Sheila Horton?" And I said, "I am." And he said, "I've heard that you're in the childcare field. We're getting ready to start a childcare center. Would you like to help us?" So that's how I ended up in Nicholasville.
Okay.
And so I was there from 2006 to 2015. But in the back of my mind, even though I was there and I loved it there, and there was still that part of me that still wanted to own my own center and do things just the way that I wanted to do it. I always felt like I had a lot of freedom and flexibility where I was, but there was still, I just wanted more. And so I just started thinking about it more and more, and I started praying on it. And then I was looking on Craigslist, and there was the building in Frankfurt. And I'm like, wow, maybe I should just at least go see what it looks like. So I
Yeah.
went, and I remember talking to Mr. Tom, and God just opened that door. And I knew that I had to step in that door, but at the same time, I'm looking at, okay, I'm getting ready to take this financial step. I'm not sure what it's going to look like. And so I went to my mom and dad, and they gave me a loan to start the childcare center in Frankfurt. And it just grew so fast, Miss Paula. I mean, it just took off. And I remember I will never forget this. You first walked in the door for that first time, and you looked at me and you said, "Are you going to be okay financially?" I don't even know if you remember asking me that. And I thought, why did she ask me that when you walked away? And then as I got to know you, I realized it was a heart issue, that you were like, is she going to be able to make it? Is she going to be able to take care of my family, you know, as she steps into this? And I am just so grateful that we crossed paths, because you looked at me one day, you were walking out of the childcare center, and I don't know if you remember this, but you turned back around and you said, "Miss Sheila, I don't know what this means, but I just pray that God will enlarge your territory." I have never forgotten that. I didn't quite know what it meant at the time, but as I have been walking out this journey, I can see how it keeps getting enlarged as I keep going through this. And so, as you know, I had the 2 centers in Frankfurt, and then COVID hit.
Yes.
And it was a really, really hard decision. And I don't know if I ever told you this. Might be the first time that you're hearing this. My biggest concern opening back up in COVID, my biggest concern was, how am I going to take care of Nacho
Yeah.
during a pandemic? And I kept trying to just go through all these scenarios of, he has to be protected. We have to make sure that he is safe. Not that the other kids didn't need to be safe too, but knowing his situation, it was like, how do we keep him safe during a pandemic, you know? But then things just kind of went in another direction. And I did not reopen after COVID, as you know, and it was a really hard decision to make. But now when I look back, again, it's about ordering those steps, and I can see how that prepared me for where I am now. I went to another agency for just a few months. And that's not like me at all, to just stay somewhere for just a few months. It's about 6 or 7 months. And so then I ended up at the Family Care Center, which is where I'm at now, working in the HANDS program, which is a home visitation program. I was in my own little cubicle working 4 days a week, you know, and I was happy. And I remember that my predecessor came to announce that she was going to retire. And one of the young ladies next to me, she said, "Why don't you put in for her job?" And I said, "Because I like not being a supervisor right now." And she said, "But you're built for so much more." And I
Mm,
was like, "Uh-oh." And I knew then, I was like, "Uh-oh." I remember I talked to my husband about it, who, by the way, we got married during COVID, and his name was Kerry, and
yes.
yes, he is wonderful. And I remember calling Brandon and I said, "There's this job that just came open, and I'm not sure if I should put in for it because it says you have to have a master's degree." And he ends up calling me back and says, "Mom, I don't think you read that right because it says and or combination of master's degree and education and
Experience.
experience." So I ended up putting in for it and ended up getting the job. And it was an accelerated promotion, because I had only been there for 9 months, so then they were trying to figure out how does it we go from a they've not had a person go from being a what would be considered a line staff person to a division director, and so
Yeah.
got all those pieces worked out, and so now I'm the division of family services, and that program is amazing. We have 4 different programs there, and one of the main program is it is a alternative high school for pregnant and teen moms.
Wow.
And so they are picked up by a school bus, and so are their babies, and they come to our center. We also have a childcare center, so that's why I love that I still get that piece of childcare.
Yeah.
And so drop the moms and the babies off, and the childcare center is also open to the public as well. They each have an assigned social worker to them so that we try to make sure that we eliminate every possible barrier that they would have so that they can succeed. And it's actually a partnership with Fayette County Public Schools.
Okay.
And it's a great program. We even have wraparound services. We offer um, it's called Family Service Coordination. I get so excited talking about it. It's a case management program
Yeah.
that works with all families within the community, that if you have a child under the age of 5 and you've got some goals you want to work on, then they will help you work on those goals. So, like I said, it's a great place to be.
That's I love what you're saying because I love that season, right? I think all of us, and this is something we keep talking with Carolina, is a lot of times we think that trajectory should look linear,
Yes.
right? It should be like this. But the reality is, and even all throughout the Bible, it's never this, it's peaks and valleys, right? And
Yes.
it's I'm gonna walk through the valley. You're not staying in the valley, right? It says through the valley of shadow and death,
Yes.
right? Like you're gonna be
Yes.
there for a hot minute and it's gonna feel like
Yes.
forever, but you're gonna come out of it,
Yes.
right? And I love what what you're telling, um, because your story is a story of strength. And a story of you do whatever needs to happen, like whatever you need to do to make sure
Mhm.
that your family's taken care of, that the people around you, that you are a blessing to others, but just trusting God, right? And the trusting God is not, it's
It's
not
not
like
e
this,
No.
and it's not easy, right?
Yes.
Querido, do you have a question?
Yes. Okay. So I know you don't have the daycare anymore, but when did you feel like God was calling you to open the daycare?
Actually felt like the calling started years before I actually was able to do it. I really feel like the calling started when the boys were around 7 and 8. But then, Carolina, what I had to realize was, and things that you'll realize as you get older, sometimes we want something right then and right now. But it's
Yes.
yes,
Talk
but it's
about that. Talk about
but
that.
ma'am, but it's not that God is saying no. Sometimes he's just saying not yet.
Yeah.
He's got to prepare you for certain things like that valley. You'll learn more in the valley than you will on the mountaintop because that valley is where all you have is you and God.
Mm.
And he will reveal things to you that you're like, oh my goodness. And if there's things that you need to change, and he will reveal those things to you too. But what I want people to understand that do listen to this podcast is that sometimes you just have to wait it out. And you don't know how long that period will be. If you really look at the fact that I knew when the boys were 7 and 8 that eventually I wanted to have my own childcare center. But by the time I was able to do that, they were in their 20s. So we're talking almost a, you know, 20-year span that it took to get to that moment. but then you have to look at all those in between moments. If I had not been a substitute teacher and a teacher, I wouldn't have known as a director how to relate to the teachers. If I hadn't have been an assistant director, I wouldn't have known how to be a director. So each step prepares you for what God has for you.
I love that you say that because you also said something that I think is a hard concept, and that is understanding what obedience looks like, right?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
obedience is not like you were saying, just doing it and doing it right now, but doing it in a way that is also honoring to God,
Absolutely.
right? And so,
Absolutely.
and so how I how do you see that weaved into your time, or where you started, when the boys were little to where you are now?
Mhm.
How does obedience look like? And I think you
Okay.
kind of have said that, um but I think a lot of times for 11-year-olds that listen to moms, I think
Yes.
they think of obedience as a, we tell you to do something, we want you to do it.
Yes.
And I don't necessarily know, because is that how you would interpret obedience? And I don't necessarily know that obedience is that as much
Right,
as,
right. I feel like sometimes when it comes to our relationship with God, is sometimes we just have to be still and
yeah,
be obedient and being still, and we have to be able to listen because God always knows what's best for us. And let's say that I did try to start a childcare center when they were, say, 9 and 10. I probably wouldn't have succeeded because at that point, it was my season to raise my boys and make sure that they were successful. And sometimes that comes before anything else is our family. And
yeah,
so I really feel like that was part of my obedience was just waiting and listening for that right time because
hmm,
everything is in his perfect timing. It's biblical that everything is in his perfect timing. Does that
absolutely,
make sense, Carolina?
yes. I think a lot of people struggle with daycare. I mean, and we see a shortage in daycare right now. I mean, because
Yes.
um it's so heavy regulated, but you're also dealing with parents' kids, right? And so the expectations of parents and what we expect of the daycare workers and the directors sometimes don't match, right? Like
Correct.
the expectation of a parent is here because it's my kid, right? And not that
Yes.
I don't necessarily think that daycares are not here, but it's never going to match it because I think every mom at some point kind of wishes that we could just take care of our kids and we can't.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so I
Yes.
think there is disconnect when it comes to that. But I love, even though when we think that daycare feels like babysitting, for you it was kingdom work.
Yes, it was. It
Right?
was.
And I think
Yes,
that
ma'am.
was the difference, right? Like I'm not here to babysit your kids. I'm here to do kingdom work because I love the interaction that you even had with the girls that worked for you and with you, because it wasn't a you punch in and you punched out and I didn't care what happened in your life,
Right.
because they were part of your ministry. Because if they were part of your ministry, then they were going to do what they needed to do with the little ones in the class, right? And I think
Absolutely.
as a mom, I can say that I've been so impacted by your legacy
Thank
because
you. Was a first-time mom.
I was a first time mom, and I needed somebody to tell me like this is okay. She's gonna do these things. Like give her. I remember you telling me like you're just expecting a little bit too much of a 2-year-old. Like I don't know if you remember that, and I'm like I know, but like if we don't start now, like where are we
Yep.
gonna be when we're 11? But the fact that you were so kind and gentle to understand that my expectations were here, and not that I didn't think you could meet my expectations, but the fact that you were able to do it. And I always say it's just kingdom work. It was kingdom work for you. So do you want to ask her that question?
What have children taught you about your faith?
Wow. They've taught me a lot about my faith. They talk about the childlike faith, and I have a couple stories that I'd like to share from the Learning Tree Christian Academy. I remember during nap time, I would always play worship music. That was, you would sleep so peaceful to worship music. And there was this one particular song called the Worship Medley that I would always play. And I remember one of the little boys would not go to sleep. And I'm like, what is that noise? What is that sound? And I could not figure what it was. And as I got closer to him, he was singing the worship song. And at that point, you're like, okay, this is working. This is what my heart is, that sometimes I don't have to be the one to speak. The music spoke for me. And I also remember that there was a family that came in on a Monday and she said, Miss Sheila, we just went to church for the first time in a long time. And my child knew all the words to the songs at church. And when I asked them where they learned that from, they said, we learned it at daycare. And she said,
Yeah.
and that's the part of believing in children, and how sometimes it's the child that is ministering to the parents and they don't even realize it. And I didn't even realize that impact either until the parent came back to me to tell me. And that's when I really started to realize how my interactions with these babies, I still call them my littles, that it can change the world.
Yeah.
It really can.
Absolutely. 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 If I could, I would like to tell how we got to you,
Yes,
because I don't know
please.
if you remember this
Yes, I do
story.
remember the story. Yes, I
It's
do.
so funny. It's not funny. Again, it's a God thing, right?
Yes.
We had Carolina was at another daycare that till this day I still know the director, but we were just really struggling because she had a dairy allergy and we felt like we were not being heard. Kelly was just at his wits ends with them, and we were like, we just got to do something. I had recently gotten a job in Frankfurt, and so making it from Frankfurt to Georgetown on time for pickup was just not working. And so we started praying for a daycare in Frankfurt. And we went and visited several. I can't tell you how many times I will go home and cry because I was like, that's not it. That's not it. Right. And I was talking with our Mimi, and she was telling us that there was a new daycare opening, and it was called the Learning Tree. So I was like, okay. I'm like, where are they? She was like, well, they're by the hospital. I'm like, okay. And, and like, of course, we had like Facebook and stuff like that, but daycare still didn't have like the social media that we have in today's day, like 10 years
Yes.
ago, wasn't necessarily used for businesses. And so, like, I was
Correct.
looking and I just couldn't find it. And then I don't know how I came up upon the ad. And so I called the Learning Tree, which was by the hospital, and made an appointment to go visit. And I'm like, I'm just going to pull up. I put the address, I think it was on my GPS, because I knew it was by the hospital, but I didn't know where it was. And my GPS takes me to the Learning Tree Christian Academy that had literally opened that day.
Yes.
And I remember pulling into the parking lot and seeing the hospital from the parking lot. And I'm like, this is not like, I mean, I see the hospital, but this is like,
Right.
this is not, but I didn't think anything of it. And I come and talk to you, and you're telling me, like, how do you hear about us? And I'm like, I made, like, I talked to you on the phone. Like, I made an appointment to come visit you. I'm sure you were probably like, you didn't, but that's fine. I remember walking in and you were playing Caleb. And immediately I felt like this is it. I don't need to hear anything. This is it. Because you were playing Caleb. And the more and more we start talking, you had a bracelet, black silicone bracelet that
Yes.
said, I am second. And I had just started a Bible study at our youth group with the I am second. And it was all these things that felt like God just knew, like all the pieces were coming together. And I remember talking to you, I believe Isaac was there, and he was the
Mhm.
only little guy there. And I was like, I don't know how we're gonna make it work, but we're gonna make it work. Like, I don't need to know how much is it gonna cost. I don't know if she has enough kids. I'm like, just tell me. And then I remember you telling me what you were gonna charge, and me thinking, this is exactly what we have.
Wow. That part I did not know.
And I remember telling Kelly, I'm like, this, like, God knew that we didn't have a penny more for it to still be comfortable. And I remember calling Kelly and saying, we don't have to look anymore because that's it. And it's so funny because then that afternoon, I got a call from the director at the Learning Academy. at the Learning Tree Academy and said, "Hey, we were just checking because you didn't show up to the appointment you had." And I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, "Are you by the hospital? Like I was there." And she was like, "No, ma'am, you were not."
Well,
And I'm like, "What's your address?" And sure enough, it was like Michael C. Davenport, and I was in Twilight Trail, like two completely different things.
yes,
And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry." I was like, "I went to a different daycare." And they were like, "Well, I mean, we're new." And I'm like, "So is this other one." And I remember thinking, I'm like, "Should I go?" And so I remember I went just because I had made the appointment, right?
correct.
But I remember going in there and like my spirit already knew what I needed to do. And it's so funny because we joke about that all the time. I'm like, when somebody told me that, it was by the hospital, I'm like, well, yeah, the hospital was right there. So like, I didn't even think about it. But it's so funny how God does those little things, right? Like he puts us in the right places at the right time. And I think it's moments like that that our faith is so shaped, right?
Yes.
Because like a whole village to really raise. It's not just kids. I mean, you really are raising parents. And I'm sure some parents were probably not nice to you. I mean, I'm sure. Do you remember me as a first time mom?
Do, but
You can say it.
no, because you were matter of fact, but you were also nervous. And I knew that. You were leaving, you didn't have the best experience. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, I have to make sure she has a really good experience to show that
Yeah.
childcare centers can be different. But I think that too is where the God piece comes in as well, because my main goal was I wanted a family atmosphere. I didn't want to just have a relationship with the children. I wanted a relationship with their families. And that was very important to me. I felt like I have them longer than you do sometimes. I have them all day and you all have them 4 or 5 hours before it's time for bed. Even like how you mentioned Isaac, that was a God thing. I had Isaac in Nicholasville from the time he was 8 months old. And it just so happened that when I gave my notice and I was talking to Mattia, they were getting ready to move to Lawrenceburg and did not know where they were going to have childcare. And that's how Isaac ended up in Frankfurt. The other, well, I call him young man now, that I met his mom. My first three was because I went to the bank to open an account
Yeah.
and she was the teller. And when I
Yeah.
told her what I was doing, she said, well, we're actually looking for a childcare center. And that's how the two boys and Carolina, that's how that started.
Yeah. And then Jackson came after him. I think
Yes,
was
Jesse
it
came after. Yes. It wasn't too long after.
Yeah. So what do you feel like you keep giving like moms and even in your new role, like do you feel like you keep giving like this what's that one advice that you keep giving that you feel like it has served you from back in the day to today?
I'd say the biggest thing is to realize that everything is a stepping stone, not a stumbling block. It's all about perspective.
Ooh. Yeah.
I think that's been but I've even had to remember that myself at times, when you're in that valley and it looks like, it's a stumbling block, but it really is a stepping stone into whatever God has next for us.
Yeah.
It's not going to be all sunshine and roses all the time. It says there'll be
Yeah.
trials and tribulations,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of it just comes back to our perspective. And Caroline, if that's one thing that I could tell you today is that as you continue in your journey, always try to look at it from the perspective point that, God has given you so many gifts and so many talents, and He's going to allow you to use those talents. But there's going to be days you're like, oh my gosh, I just don't feel like doing this. And that's okay. You need to know it's okay on the days that you just don't feel like doing it. But that doesn't mean you still don't have to do it.
Yeah.
The days when He will give you that extra strength to be like, look, this is what I need you to do. I need you to get yourself out of the way because it's not about you. It's about ministering to other people. And you'll find out that sometimes on those days, the days that you don't feel like doing it are the days that you have the most impact. That
Yeah.
somebody will come up to you and say, oh my gosh, I've been going through this, and, whatever that circumstance may be. But just please always remember that stepping stone, that it's a stepping stone and not a stumbling block.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. What question do you have?
I don't want to ask either of those questions.
Well, it's funny because you talked about at the very beginning how Carolina was always so, um I don't like to use like hard-headed, because like she was always very confident about herself.
Mhm.
Like she knew who she was as a little girl until this day. And I think that sometimes is like the thing that she struggles with just because she strives to be a people pleaser in a lot of ways. Um, but she also takes direction, that piece of obedience, like because and I think it's because she's also the first kid. But there's so many funny stories that happen at the learning tree of pieces of obedience with Carolina. And Brandon will always be in my heart because that boy, listen, he whipped her up in shade
Remember,
and
I strengthened my core.
yeah.
You've been talking about all this stuff, but I don't remember any
It's
of it.
it's so funny. You woke up in the middle of the night and
Yes.
daddy and I could hear you. And I'm like, what is happening? So we go and you're doing crunches in your crib. And I'm like, because we had just turned like your bed into like a day bed or something. And we're like, Carolina, what are you doing? And she was like, Mr. Brandon said that I had to strengthen my core. And I'm like, what? I'm like, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Go back to sleep. And I'm like, the next day, I'm like, Brandon, what are you
Yeah,
telling these kids to do?
yeah.
Like, they're
See,
taking it.
I don't know.
I know.
I don't remember any of this stuff.
But and the other thing that's funny is, um, I don't know if you remember this, but Carolina was like 18 months, 19 months, and you're like, Miss Paula, are you working on her on potty training? Because she's going to the bathroom and we're not even telling her to. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm not ready for that. And she was like, well, we
yeah.
can work with her. And I'm like, I'm not. Like, I
He said, "I'm not ready for that."
I'm like, I can't do it. And you were like, I think she's ready. And I'm like, I think you're crazy. And you're like, just let me try. And then like, sure, like it's so funny because I didn't have to potty train her. Like you guys did it. And you were like, I think we just need to go ahead and go to pull-ups. And I'm like, no. And you're like, yeah.
Yes. You were resistant.
Like I'm like I'm not ready for this. Like we're just too little. Like
Yes.
I'm not ready for it. But it's so funny because like again, that goes back to the whole thing of she set her mind into probably the older kids were going to the bathroom and she didn't get to go to the bathroom. It's what I think probably happened. You can probably correct me on that. And then she was like,
No.
she was like, I want to do that.
That
Yeah,
happens a lot, when you have the older ones and then the littles are watching going, "Oh, well, you know what? I think I can do that too." And
yeah.
and and she did.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because like again, like I didn't have to help her with potty training at all. She just basically told us. I mean, she told you basically, and then you were like, "We need to do this," and I'm like, "No,
Mhm.
we're not." And then Nacho, like complete opposite.
Yes.
Like, boy, I was like, "Okay, buddy, like we have to stop this." Like,
Yes.
it's time. But it's so funny because I think there's so much about little things like that though with girls too, that I think it's important. I think for Carolina, I know that like she's just listening to a lot of this because I guess she was little, she doesn't remember, but what she
Mhm.
doesn't understand is this is Miss Sheila is the person I trusted with one of my biggest treasures, which is you and Bobby. And she, it's funny because I not that I was jealous, but the day you went to kindergarten, you didn't come to mommy. You went to Miss Sheila after school.
I remember that
And
because I
the whole day I was a nervous wreck because I was like, what if she gets in the I remember texting you this. I don't know if you remember this. And saying, what if she gets in the wrong bus? What happens?
Yes.
Like all these things because again, first time mom.
Yes, of course.
And I didn't get to go pick you up. I didn't get to have that first day of kindergarten with you. Miss Sheila did. And I'm so grateful for that because she recorded you getting off the bus and she took pictures and you got to tell her how excited you were that day. And I remember thinking that's what God's love is. Being able to sacrifice your kids for others, right? And the fact that I was okay with you having my little girl and get to experience that moment because it was sacred. But I
Yes.
knew that in that moment, Carolina wanted to come to you and she wanted to tell you all about the little friends and all that stuff. And then, gosh, COVID happened that year and our world was flipped upside
Yes,
down.
it was.
But what an honor! I remember that day so vividly because that's when, for me, that sacrificial love. Like I understood it as a parent, but the moment that I was able to be like, I didn't get to experience this, but Miss Sheila did, and she treasured it for me. And the fact that you allowed me to be worried about very human things that
Yes.
day, and you still made it heaven-like at the end. Um, and so I think it's daycare is such a hard thing. And we talked about Nacho, you talked a little bit about him and you guys, gosh, how I can't remember how many times I cried with you, when we get this diagnosis and trying to figure out what do we do, right?
Yes.
Like, do we bubble wrap this kid?
Right. Right.
Do we, do I need to quit my job? Like, what do we do? And I remember you telling me, you're like, we got this. We can do
Yeah.
this.
Well, let's at least try it, and that's we sent Haley to the appointment so that
Yeah,
she would know how to take care of him. But to me, it was second. That's what we do. You know what I mean? There was no hesitation. There was no second thoughts. There was just like, this is what we do as a family,
yeah,
and we take care of family. And I'm so glad for that season with him as well, even though it was a little shorter than it
yeah,
was with Carolina. But that was an eye-opening season. I've never taken we all learned that season together. I
yeah,
had never had a child that had the CF, and so that was when we walked out together. But I knew that you needed that support and Kelly needed that support. So I'm like, what can I do to at least ease some of that burden?
yeah.
And I hope that we did,
We did.
I
I
was-
think I 100% believe that the daycare was part of the reason why we took the approach of CF doesn't dictate how we do life. CF just gets to do life with us.
yes,
Because even at the center, they were like, "Are you seriously thinking about sending this kid to daycare?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, I have peace in my heart that this is the right thing. And, because at that time we were going to clinic every week.
mm-hmm,
And so when I told them that somebody from the center was coming to our next appointment, they couldn't believe it. They're like, "Why is your daycare willing to do that?" And I'm like, "Because that's our daycare." Like, again, it's kingdom work. Like, I just go
yes,
back to it every time. It's I know my mom is gonna be listening to this episode, and we've said that time and time again on how your work and I if you allow me to say this to you is I think in ministry we are to it's like the parable of the seed and the sower, right? Like you want to put all the seeds and then sometimes we don't get to see what those seeds, like the fruit that
exactly.
those seeds, but I hope that and you can see with Carolina right next to me that part of your seeds it's right here. And part of her Christian faith is because of you. You playing music, like worship music. I'm sure it's part of the reason why she loves worship music. I mean, and she's singing in praise band at youth group. Part of the reason why she had a understanding of the Bible going into kindergarten, it's because of you. It's because of being obedient to that call of saying this is important. So, um, I I think it's just so important to be able to understand that in those moments when life feels so overwhelming, like diagnosis like CF or being a
Yes,
first time mom or teaching your kid how to potty train, that being able to say, okay, God, where do we
hmm
go from here?
yes,
Because again, it's not this,
yes,
right? I'm okay with this,
yeah,
right?
yes. I remember we worked through her allergies.
Yeah.
And, we would have to tell all the parents, when they wanted to celebrate a birthday, you can only bring these items in, and
Yeah.
finding items so that she could eat so that she still felt included. That was very important that she felt included, even in something as simple as food. That's
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
that, she doesn't have to always eat something else so that she can sit with her peers and, do those kind of things. So
Well,
I
I
remember,
remember
remember the cupcakes, your first time making the cupcakes?
yes, dairy-free cupcakes. I'm like,
They're
"These things are gonna taste horrible," and they didn't.
they, but,
But
but that's love.
finding, like, the Oreos didn't have any dairy,
Yes.
I
It's a game
that was
changer.
such a light bulb moment. I'm like, "What?" And you're like, "Yes, they don't have any dairy," and I'm like, "Well, we're eating Oreos every day now."
Do you still eat Oreos?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
Carolina, can I ask you a question? How do you feel hearing us talk about you in your younger years? How does this make you feel? Because I know a lot of it you're not going to remember because you were so young, but
Well, yes, what you said, I don't remember any of the stuff you guys are talking about, you know? It's also kind of powerful too because you get told stuff about your childhood a lot, but like I don't think there's times where you just like sit down and have like an hour-long conversation with like someone who actually like shaped you to be the person you are today. She did that, but you did that too, you know? It's like it's kind of crazy to think like I'm here now and I remember memories that I had from last year at the beginning of the school year. But
mhm.
it's crazy to think that people have these memories from like 10 plus years ago when I was just a
Right.
little kid who just and they like just remember like raising me
Yeah.
basically.
Well, and then do you hear that there was an impact to your life even
Right.
when you don't remember it?
Right. That's
Right? Like the impact that you made in Miss Sheila's life, even though you don't remember it as a little kid, you're like, nothing for me to bring to the table. And I think that's one thing we talk about with you and your friends right now, that you're like, what impact do I get to make right now? And sometimes we're like, we don't know what that is, right?
Exactly.
But the fact that you can see that even in those moments that you may not remember, and 10 years, 20 years from now, you may not remember everything that happened in sixth grade.
right, you know.
But I think there's also that feeling where like this is safe, right? Like Miss Sheila is safe, right? And there's like, Jackson and the twins that they have been in your life your whole life. Like
Mhm.
you don't know life without
Them.
them, right? And so you may not remember the moment that you guys met, but you also don't remember life without him in it.
And the fact that you all met there. You and
Yeah,
Monica met there.
absolutely. And Monica is like one of my best friends.
Mhm.
And Aubrey still says that she's gonna marry Nacho one day. And we're like, girlfriend, she has the wedding planned out already. But she's a spitfire. She's Monica reincarnated for sure.
That is too funny.
But what questions do you have, Carolina?
Okay, so my first question for you is what was I like in preschool? Because clearly I don't remember any of it.
You were very you were wise beyond your years. You were very smart. You were very easy to teach because you wanted to soak things up like a sponge. But I also remember there was one time when I cannot remember what I asked you to do. And I said, Carolina, like I said, I can't remember what it was. And you looked at me and you said, I won't. And I went, Carolina. And I said, you have to do that. And you stomped your foot and you said, I will not, Miss Sheila. And I said, okay, okay, okay. I wish I could remember what it was, but you just kind of went over, did your own thing, and I let you do your own thing until you were ready to come back to the group. She was not having it that day. I will not.
Yeah, that is so funny.
Yes. It's the way she crossed. It was the arm cross. I won't. And I was
She
like,
still does that.
do you still do that?
She still does that.
But like I said, you were you sang a lot as a child.
Mm.
You were always singing and dancing and you just had a spirit of joy. I guess that's the best way to explain it.
You know, it's the things you don't remember too. Like there's things sometimes like I'll just be thinking about random things and I'll think of like times when I was in preschool and like I've never remembered them before, you know, but like they just pop into my mind, you know? Like one day I remembered playing with Isaac like 10 years ago, and we were just playing with trains, and I was like, I don't know how I would remember that because that was like 10 plus years ago, and I've never had that memory before,
Yeah.
But it's just like things just come back to you at random times,
Mhm.
and then you feel like it was meant to happen almost for a reason, like it was planned.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then like I don't know, you just feel like a sense of calm knowing that you had like like a good childhood,
Yeah.
and like getting to meet your friends that even if you don't see them now forever, like
Yeah.
every day, like you still know who they are.
Well, and what really truly happens is that not everybody gets to have this experience we had in daycare. And that goes back to the reason why you started
Mhm.
child like
Right.
early childhood, right? Because not everybody gets to have that we did, and we did it because of you. And um I'll never forget that conversation about, may God enlarge your territory. And I remember telling my mom about that and her telling me, she was like, there's a book about it. And I remember thinking, I'm like, okay. And I remember starting to read, and that's one of the shortest prayers in the book,
Mhm.
the prayer of Job. And it's the Father enlarge my territory, but and it's not for wealth. It is not for self-glorifying. But it is so I can plant more for you, right?
Yes.
So so
Yes.
so my arms can, when your arms stretch out wide, it's not dictated by this is this is how little my territory is right now.
Right.
And I know your territory is to be this way, right? And it's I am so grateful for you. So I guess just to wrap it up, do you, as we think of this theme of blossoming into beautiful you, one of the things I was telling Carolina actually on one of our old podcasts is, and I don't have a green thumb, but I do know this, that sometimes you have to start something little, and then as they sprout out, you transplant them into a different pot, but you
Mhm.
can't put them all the way out there just yet. Like, you still have to protect it, right? And as they grow and lay roots, then you change the pot into something different. And then at some point, you have to put it outside and let it plant, like have deep roots, right? So it can go into the
Plant
earth,
its own
right?
seeds.
And then spread out. But I think sometimes we want to trim the roots because it makes it look pretty, but we can contain the size of the tree, right? Because by
Right.
trimming the root, we can keep it inside and it's going to be greener. It might look luscious, but we are containing the size. And I think as we blossom into beautiful you, what I want Carolina to hear is that God never wants to contain us to make us beautiful and petite.
Absolutely.
He wants us eventually to be transplanted out. So even when the weather happens, even
Mhm.
when it snows, even when it rains, that the sun is still going to come, and to trust that there's enough nutrients in the ground that is going to let you grow, right? And so
Absolutely.
as we as we think of that, when you think about blossoming into a beautiful you, what does that look like? And then what will you tell Carolina to wrap us up as to looking into, because you were part of that first pot.
Yes. Wow. I would tell you that there will be seasons where you have to bloom where you're planted. Those are those seasons when it's just time for you to grow. But you also have to be mindful and listen to God when He tells you it's time to, like your mom said, transplant. Those are very important seasons. You have to really be open to listening to what God has for you. And another thing, too, when you're planted somewhere, you're always looking, I don't want to say back in your past, but what I want to say is that you're looking back to see who you can pull along with you on this journey. Does that make sense? Because sometimes there's going to be people that need you in that moment, and you're going to need people in that moment. But there's also going to be moments that this is going to happen to you. It always does. You're going to run into a younger version of yourself.
Mm,
And you're going to be able to tell your younger version of your story, and that's going to help their stories. Your mom told you that already?
no.
Okay.
No, I was just thinking of a little girl we know. She's about third grade. She's Nacho's age, and she just reminds me of myself a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't know what's going to blossom from that relationship. If you look at relationships as they blossom because they do, and it never stops. You're going to meet different people along the way. And, sometimes you hear this all the time. It may be for a season, it may be for a reason. And just my main thing, if I could tell you anything, is just while you're being planted and transplanted and blossoming, just be open to what God tells you, because it's not always going to look like what we think it will.
Right.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for saying that. All right, Carolina, what final words of wisdoms do you have for Miss Sheila and for everybody listening?
Well, thank you, Miss Sheila, so much for
You're
having this
welcome.
episode with us. And I think this was a really great start to this series, and I don't think I would have had it any other way.
Yeah. What's one thing about what we talked about, and to hear Miss Sheila's story, what's the one thing that you're still thinking about?
I don't know, because it's kind of crazy to think about it and just think, like, I went through that. Like, I didn't go through that, but, like, I was a part of that too, you know?
Yeah, part of her journey. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But probably knowing that she had a calling for so long and her just being able to sit still
Yeah.
and not, like, just sit in peace and knowing that God was going to provide what he wanted her to do.
Yeah. 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 So, that's God's plan is not it never aligns with our time.
No,
Never.
never.
But his time is always perfect. And
Yes.
so, Miss Sheila, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you, because you've helped me tremendously, and I have blossomed as a mom because of you, and so much of your love, and the fact that I could trust you wholeheartedly with my kids, with both of them. The fact that you saw things, that you got to experience things before that I didn't get to experience first. You guys saw Nacho walk first before I did. Um, and I am so grateful that I get to say that I did that with you and with the ladies that were in every room. I remember praying over every door in that center every time I walk through, that the Holy Spirit will always be there, and that God will always keep bad away, and holding on that was true. And so I just want to say thank you, because you water me through my season of motherhood in the very beginning.
And we don't blossom all.
Yeah, we don't blossom alone. She
No,
just
we
said
don't.
that.
She did. I want to say thank you as well, because, I was just starting a new business, and you entrusted me with Carolina and then Nacho, of course. But I appreciate that. I appreciate all the support that you and Kelly gave me over the years. And I will never forget you all. Ever, ever, ever. Like I said at the beginning, your family holds a really special place in my heart. And I'm very honored that you chose to have me on your podcast today.
So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you,
Thank
thank you.
you.
And so with that, I guess thank you for listening today.
Really.
And we hope that this was good to those moms out there. If you're in a season where you're just trying to figure out daycare, or even you're just trying to figure out motherhood, find people that will water you.
Yes.
Find people that will water you.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
And don't forget, God's grace is for you. And girl,
And boy,
you're loved, and you're enough.
share this episode with your mom, your daughter, or even your bestie.
We'll see you next time on Grace
Giggles.
and Girl Talk. Bye.
Bye.